Open. That's what we are. I'm your host, Dr. Bobby, and you're watching it. It's a live interactive program that brings the Bronx and New York City straight to your TV set. You can stay connected to us through social media at BronxNet TV. Now, leading things off, our first guest is the Vice President for the Juice Learning. I was telling him about the Juice Mobiles and all that stuff off camera, but we'll talk about that more. And he joins us to speak about the work that his organization is doing to improve literacy rates in our community. So please welcome to the show, Brendan Kells. Brendan, welcome to the show.
Hi, Dr. Lee. Thanks so much for having me. I appreciate it.
Yeah, interesting name. I mean, we were talking about it. We might as well let people know. Juice. How did you come up with the name Juice? The Juice.
Well, our founder came up with the name, and I think it means a lot to a lot of different people. But for us, we always talk about the juice is freshly squeezed every single day, and it's certainly worth the squeeze.
Yeah, yeah. For WBLS, there's a young man by the name of Mr. Magic, just briefly, not to cut into your show and what we want to talk about, but he named the Juice Mobiles, our vans rolling through the tri-state area, the Juice Mobile. And the crew that operated them, he called us the Juice Crew. And he called us the station with the juice. And at the time, everything was fresh with the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air and all that. That was a lingo back then. We got the juice, the station with the juice. This is fresh. So yeah, juice means a whole lot.
Yeah, and I would say, Dr. Lee, it's not even a sidebar. I mean, I think part of the name of the juice is because we want to make reading cool. And that's sometimes a difficult task, but we've found some success with it. And so, I appreciate the background of the name. It's part of the intention behind it.
How long have you been in existence? And tell us about the mission of the juice.
Sure. Yeah. So we've been around about 3 years now. And the mission is really to improve literacy overall. More broadly than that, though, we really think about it as equipping young people with the skills necessary to thrive, both academically, but outside of the four walls of school as well. And I think the way we think about what that means is improving the ability to read with comprehension, the ability to communicate clearly, the ability to empathize with others, and the ability to think critically about the world around them. That's kind of how we think about our mission is what it is that we're doing when we're working on literacy.
Yeah. There's always something in your mind before you even start an organization that made you want to just get involved. What was it for you?
Well, so my background before I arrived at the Juice was in education. I was a high school history teacher for 14 years. I also spent 9 summers as a summer school principal. So I was part of the daily struggle of trying to do this in the classroom and from an administrative level as well in summer school, which is not always the most receptive crowd. And I got into teaching because I wanted to have these rich discussions around history, but I realized very quickly early on that the foundational skill for accessing just about anything was reading. And so that informed a lot of my own perspective when I joined the Juice as well.
Yeah. And, we're approaching International Day of Digital Learning. What are some of the challenges that we face around this time? Some of the things that we can do to come out of it?
Yeah, well, as you know, we have a significant gap for students in terms of reading proficiency. The numbers are stark in terms of the number of students who are reading proficiently. But that just really names the challenge. I think what happens as a result of that is you have a lack of access. What's causing it is ultimately a lack of access across a wide range, a big spectrum of things. But perhaps most importantly, even when students do have access to some level of resources, frequently those resources don't match the student's reading ability with their interest levels. And so the process of reading becomes this overwhelming thing. Like, where do you even begin? And I think that's what I witnessed as an educator. And it's part of what drew me to the Juice to think about, all right, here's a company that has a mission to try to go about this differently. And I think we can truly achieve it with some innovative practices.
Yeah. And once you find that sweet spot, it makes it a lot easier, right, to work with youngsters.
Without a doubt. And I
Right.
mean,
Coaching
success,
technique. Yeah.
it's like a snowball effect,
Yeah.
right? Of once the process begins, it begins this virtuous cycle of positive reinforcement and confidence building, and the reader can take off.
Exactly. How important is it to for resources to be strongly directed toward bridging the digital divide in homes without access to laptops and digital learning devices? A lot of people have that problem in the inner cities.
Yes, I think it's mission critical. Clearly, COVID illustrated this point for a lot of folks. I know, the city itself, New York City, devoted a lot of resources to trying to bridge that divide, and there's a lot of community organizations that try to bridge that divide as well.
Yeah.
But you also have, as a company, this is something that has informed how we've developed the Juice as well. Um, we built a platform that can be accessed anywhere on the go. And so it's not just, you don't have to have a laptop in order to be able to access this. If you have a phone, all of the functionality that you would have on your normal digital like desktop device
Yeah.
exists on the phone as well. And we took the pains to develop it. If we're going to do a reading platform, we got to do it right and meet people where they're at and where they're doing their reading. And understanding that that's not always in best case scenarios in like a quiet room, perhaps with a laptop with Wi-Fi access and so on and so forth. So I think that's part of we felt as part of our responsibility as well as a company.
Beautiful. I love it. What are some of the tips that you can share with us to increase reading levels in the Bronx? Or also up to 5 boroughs?
Yeah. I mean, so I think it's going to sound simple, right? There's an adage in education that says you should meet students where they're at, right? And then that's how you can take them where you want them to go. But trying to do that when it comes to reading is an enormous task. The first is finding texts that match a young person's reading ability.
Mhm.
But oftentimes when you do that, it's hard to find that simultaneously matches their interest level. And so I think there's, the first critical piece to what we do at the Juice is that everything that we write at 4 different reading levels, so that a student may engage with it and look at it and say, okay, this is going on in the world around me, right? So I know that I know the relevance of it. But so frequently the things that are written are not written with a young person in mind or with perhaps a lower reading level in mind. And so that's the first step to meeting them where they're at. But then the interest level
I
needs
like
to
it.
be there as well, right? So you
Yeah.
have a lot of developing readers who, as they age, the texts that may be appropriate to meet them where they're at in their reading ability is almost insulting to their intelligence, right? And so they're like, I mean, doesn't match my lived experience.
Yeah.
So it turns them off from reading before they've ever began. So I think that those are 2 critical components that are actually a very difficult needle to thread, and that we try to do very carefully at the Juice.
Yeah.
But then beyond that, I think it's really important to invite conversations around the reading. We think about, I mean, reading is a shared responsibility. It's not just the purview of an English teacher or a history teacher or a parent. It's everybody's responsibility. And having a common text is it has an enormous amount of value. As an educator, to me, like the gold standard was having a text that all of my students could access. But with 20 students in the classroom, I had maybe 20 different reading abilities. And so it was really difficult to bridge that gap sometimes, right? And so having a resource that can allow the personalization and the differentiation that's necessary, the different levels of a text, so that everybody can be reading the same thing at their level and then engage in the conversation together.
Yeah.
I think it really builds that community and that confidence to say like, oh, wow, I was invited into this conversation and I have some meaningful things to say about this, right?
Yeah.
Um,
And it
and so
seems
I
like
think
you're hitting the nail on the head. You get the individualized attention with the smaller classroom sizes, and then you have the different levels of reading that you guys are writing. You guys are putting it all together. I like
that's
it.
exactly right. Yeah, and the goal is, of course, that ultimately we turn this into a habit, right? It's a habit of mind that this can be a daily practice. And so there's one other element of what we do to make sure that that's sustainable is that we write it. Again, meeting students where they're at. We write it in short form, right? In 250 to 300 words. So it's not this wall of text that's intimidating. It's not going to require you to set aside hours of your day to make sure that you can read this. The juice can be read in 15 minutes a day. And so what it's going to do is give you knowledge, right? And knowledge is power. I think so frequently that expression is used in terms of like negotiations, like knowledge is power in negotiation. It is a critical component to the science of reading. Background knowledge is a thing that allows you to access a wide range of texts, right? So knowledge is truly power. So the ability to know a little bit of information about a lot of topics is actually enormously valuable to the process of reading. And so that a student, whether they're moving from their science class to their history class to their English class, or just talking to a person on the street about what's going on in the world around them today, has something already there. The seed has already been planted, and now they can enter into that conversation, right? So this is why we've designed the juice the way that we have to really empower young people to now we know that you're engaged. We know that you're interested. We believe that you have a lot to say about this. We want to give you the resources that you can actually read about it so that you can understand it. And now you're going to be a part of the conversation.
Well, you guys have the juice, you know. Brendan, thank you so much. Brendan Kells, where can we go for more information? How can people get involved? Is it all on the website?
Yes, you can find all the information you would need to find about us on the website. That is thejuicelearning.com. And visit us, check it out. It's worth the squeeze.
Beautiful, beautiful. I'll leave it right there. Brendan, thank you so much.
Thanks for the time, Kells. Dr. Lee. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Brendan Kells, The Juice. Learn all you can right there. He says it's worth the squeeze. We'll take a quick break. We'll come back. I've got more open coming up your way.